You ever see a political machine start to crumble because of ridicule? That is exactly what just happened. MAGA is in total disarray after the so-called Meal Team 6 debacle blew up online and was forced into damage control. The story is wild, full of contradictions, hypocrisy, and exposed weaknesses. I want to walk you through everything, layer by layer, so you get the full picture, and by the end, I hope you feel fired up to share this, talk about it, and use the ridicule as a tool. Here is how it all unfolded. In 2025, under Trump's second term, the administration has been deploying National Guard troops from red states into cities controlled by Democrats. Supposedly, these deployments were meant to help with immigration enforcement, protests, and so-called law and order missions. One such deployment was a contingent from the Texas National Guard, sent into Chicago as part of a political crackdown. Now, here comes the twist. When those Texas troops arrived, someone snapped photos, not of urban warfare or dramatic arrests, but of overweight soldiers getting off trucks in full combat gear. The images spread across social media like wildfire. People noticed how these troops did not look like elite warriors at all. They looked tired, unfit, and completely out of shape. The internet went insane. It was not just laughter. It was relentless mockery. The soldiers were renamed Meal Team 6, a play on the famous SEAL Team 6. Others called them the gravyseals. Comment sections were flooded with memes comparing them to fast food mascots in camouflage. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, and YouTube exploded with jokes about the Texas Guard being Trump's personal buffet squad. But here is where it gets serious. That mockery did not stay online. It made its way up the chain of command. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, one of Trump's most loyal appointees, saw those photos. Hegseth has been obsessed for months with military fitness and appearance. He once said he found overweight soldiers tiring to look at. So, when the pictures of Meal Team 6 went viral, he took it personally. Within 24 hours, the Texas National Guard announced that several of those troops had been sent home. They claimed some had failed to meet physical fitness standards. Officials refused to say exactly how many were removed, but sources later confirmed that at least 7 soldiers were dismissed and replaced. Hegseth then made a statement declaring that standards were back at the Department of War. And just like that, the memes had drawn blood. Think about what that means. Ordinary people, laughing online, forced the highest levels of the MAGA military establishment to act. No lawsuits, no protests, just public embarrassment. It was one of the rare times mockery changed official policy in less than a day. So what does that tell us? First, it proves MAGA's strength is built entirely on image. They depend on appearing powerful, disciplined, and fearsome. When that illusion cracks, everything beneath it crumbles. Their power is theatrical, not moral. Second, it exposes the hypocrisy at the core of Trump's so-called law and order movement. These are the same leaders who lecture America about toughness, patriotism, and discipline. Yet they deployed soldiers without vetting them properly. Then, when caught, they tried to save face by blaming those same soldiers they had just sent into the field. Third, this story shows that ridicule can be more effective than outrage. The MAGA machine thrives on anger. They feed on liberal tears, protests, and moral condemnation. But they do not know how to handle laughter. Laughter disarms them. It makes them look ridiculous, not dangerous. When people laugh at you, you lose control of the narrative, and that is exactly what happened. Trump's tough guy image took a hit. The so-called warrior ethos Hegseth had been preaching turned into a meme overnight. The sight of overweight soldiers carrying assault rifles through Chicago's streets became the symbol of a movement that talks about strength but delivers clowns in camouflage. Now let us talk about Pete Hegseth himself. Hegseth is no stranger to controversy. A former Fox News host turned military hardliner, he built his reputation by attacking what he calls the woke leftist takeover of the military. He has spent months campaigning to purge diversity programs, gender inclusion policies, and anything that looks progressive from the armed forces. He replaced them with what he calls warrior values toughness, loyalty, aggression. But his version of toughness is performative. It is more about aesthetics than actual discipline. So, when the images of Meal Team 6 went viral, it threatened everything he had been selling to Trump's base. He needed a scapegoat. Instead of taking responsibility for rushing unfit troops into a political stunt, he turned on them. His message was clear. Anyone who makes the movement look bad will be removed. But here's the irony. The public did not side with Hegseth. They saw through it. Social media mocked him even more. People shared old clips of Hegseth bragging about not washing his hands for 10 years. They called him the Secretary of Soap Dodging. Memes labeled him the General of Germ Warfare. The more he tried to look authoritative, the more ridiculous he appeared. Meanwhile, Texas officials scrambled to explain. They said the deployment had been rushed due to urgent orders from Washington. They admitted they had not performed the standard physical checks. One official even said, off record, that the deployment was more about optics than necessity. The troops were there to make Trump look decisive, not to accomplish any real mission. That confession says everything. MAGA's use of the military is not about defense. It is about spectacle. It is about using soldiers as props to project strength. And when those props do not fit the image, they are discarded. The backlash continued for days. Commentators called it the soft civil war, where one side is fighting for control of optics rather than actual governance. Red state governors like Greg Abbott defended their troops, but even his words could not stop the avalanche of ridicule. Abbott called them an elite fighting force. The internet turned that into another joke, plastering his quote over pictures of the soldiers eating fast food in full uniform. You could almost feel the panic ripple through MAGA circles. They knew this was not just about a few overweight soldiers. It was about perception. It was about the credibility of their entire movement. For years, they had built their image around military valor, physical dominance, and patriotic posturing. And now, a few viral photos had turned their pride into a punchline. The contrast between image and reality has always haunted Trump's movement. Trump himself is the embodiment of excess, fake tan, fake hair, fake strength. His followers idolize the appearance of power, not power itself. They love the aesthetic of dominance, but hate the discipline it requires. That is why this story hit them so hard. It exposed the fantasy. And you can tell how much it stung by how fast they reacted. MAGA propaganda channels immediately tried to spin the story. They said the photos were doctored. They claimed liberal media was fat-shaming patriots. But the damage was done. The memes kept spreading. Every attempt to suppress them only made them go further. Here is the deeper lesson. When you expose authoritarians to ridicule, you undermine the foundation of their control. They rely on fear and reverence. When that turns into laughter, their psychological power collapses. Dictators and strongmen hate to be mocked. It reminds them that their authority depends on belief, not truth. You can trace this through history. Soviet propaganda collapsed under the weight of satire. Nazi symbols were ridiculed by underground comedians. Even modern autocrats struggle when humor breaks through their censorship. It is because humor flips the hierarchy. It reminds people that the emperor has no clothes. In this case, Meal Team 6 became that reminder. It was a moment of truth in a sea of propaganda. The sight of those soldiers, sweaty and winded, was more powerful than any speech. It said what no activist could articulate so sharply, that the regime's idea of strength is a joke.